Hello, you're listening to the TerraLex podcast, where we break down current issues and trends in the legal industry. Join us as we gain valuable insights from our member law firms across the world, as well as from the in-house counsel community and experienced professionals in their field.
As you will recall, in March of 2018, President Trump issued two proclamations adjusting imports of steel and aluminum into the United States under what's known as Section 232. In a tweet, Trump asserted that trade wars are good and easy to win. On January 24th, 2020, President Trump issued Presidential Proclamation 9980, announcing that effective February 8th of 2020, the existing 232 tariffs on aluminum and steel imports will also apply to certain derivative products of aluminum and steel. These derivative products include nails, tacks, staples, auto bumpers, and stamped sheet metal body parts for tractors. Now, the steel tariffs do not apply to imports from Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, Mexico, and South Korea. The aluminum tariffs do not apply to Argentina, Australia, Canada, and Mexico. They omit Brazil and South Korea. Now, the wisdom of President Trump's decisions in this regard remain a hotly debated topic, but that is not the issue for today. Instead, we are going to discuss a much more practical topic, the exclusion process used to try to get around these tariffs. We will also discuss the companion topic, how to object to a competitor's efforts to obtain an exclusion. Now, Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962 allows the president to impose special tariffs based on a finding by the Secretary of Commerce that an article is being imported into the United States in such quantities or under such circumstances as to threaten or impair the national security. Now, frankly, this section has rarely been used. Indeed, until it was employed by President Trump 2 years ago, it had not been invoked since the creation of the World Trade Organization in 1995. Now, President Trump's proclamations impose a 25% tariff on certain imported steel products and a 10% tariff on certain aluminum imports. What are those? The steel products that are covered by the 232 tariffs include rolled, semi-finished carbon and alloy flat products, such as steel sheets and plates, as well as steel bars, rails, rods, and beams, and seamless or welded steel pipes and tubes. The aluminum products that are covered include unwrought aluminum, semi-finished aluminum bars and rods, aluminum wire, and aluminum tubes and pipe extrusions and fittings. Now, I should note that over the past 2 years, the president has entered into agreements lifting tariffs for certain favored nations, including, as I mentioned before, Canada and Mexico, in the run-up to renegotiating the NAFTA accords. So who are the big winners here? The big winners of the tariffs are a few large American companies that produce steel and aluminum. By contrast, most US companies, especially small and middle-sized ones, that rely on foreign imports as a constituent element in their products, have struggled as a result of these tariffs. And of course, it is the American consumer that ultimately bears the burden of these tariffs in the form of higher prices for goods containing steel or aluminum. But let's focus right now on one aspect of Section 232, the exclusion process. The statute provides an escape clause of sorts for some U.S. companies. The proclamations explicitly authorize the Secretary of Commerce to grant exclusions from the tariffs if the Secretary determines that the steel or aluminum product for which the exclusion is requested is not, quote, produced in the United States in a sufficient and reasonably available amount or of a satisfactory quality, unquote. In the alternative, a steel or aluminum article can be excluded, quote, based upon specific national security considerations, unquote. Now, the Secretary is directed to develop procedures for such exclusion requests and for objections to those requests. I should point out that at present, there is no exclusion process for the recently imposed 232 duties on steel and aluminum derivative products. Now, over the past 2 years, thousands of requests for exclusion have been submitted. Many thousands have in fact been granted, but many others have been denied as a result of objections filed by U.S. steel and aluminum producers. Virtually all of the exclusions that have been granted relate to unique types of steel and aluminum products, typically ones with unique chemical compositions or properties that are not regularly made in the United States. Now, here's the point of my presentation today. You may have clients in the U.S. that are affected by Section 232 tariffs and who believe that they should be allowed to exclude their imports from the tariffs because they cannot buy an exact substitute in the U.S. Or, on the other hand, you may have U.S. clients that find that one of their customers or competitors have taken unfair advantage of the exclusion process and is importing foreign steel or aluminum at cheaper prices than American companies can make them. If either of these two types of clients turn to you for help, what do you need to know either to request an exclusion or to object to an exclusion? Now, the short answer is that you fill out an exclusion request form and file it with the Department of Commerce online. Because of the volume of exclusion requests, the whole process has become highly routinized and bureaucratized. Once you submit this form, your request is likely to be granted without further work on your part unless there's an objection filed. In that circumstance, you will need to file a rebuttal, which again is a standardized form. The objector, in turn, may then file a surrebuttal, which once again is a standardized form. There's no hearing and no briefing. It's all done on forms, although you can attach some supplements. But one word of warning, the exclusion process has gone through several procedural changes and iterations over the past 2 years. If you do a Google search for information about the exclusion process, you're going to find a number of how-to information sheets and Federal Register notices issued by the Department of Commerce relating to the exclusion process. Now, most of this guidance has now been superseded by new procedures. So when you go online to get some guidance, make sure you find the most current instructions. For example, the department initially used the existing general federal website called regulations.gov for the exclusion process. It was readily available to quickly implement the exclusion process, but it soon became clear to everybody that this site was not easily adapted to the 232 submissions process, particularly as it evolved into a multi-step system and required a significant amount of human data entry. The department concluded that a specifically designed web-based portal would be easier and more efficient for both outside parties and the department itself. So by mid-2019, two bureaus within the Department of Commerce, the Bureau of Industry and Security, or BIS, and the International Trade Administration, the ITA, developed a new portal to streamline the exclusions process. The new web portal replaced the data collection point of regulations.gov with web-based forms intended to enhance data integrity and quality controls. The portal now allows 232 submitters to easily view all exclusion requests, objections, rebuttals, and surrebuttals in one web-based system. After a transition period that lasted for several months last year, only the 232 exclusion portal can be used for 232 exclusion submissions and follow-on filings. The portal is available at www.commerce.gov/page/section 232 investigations. In order to make filings on the new portal, submitters must complete a web-based registration form prior to submitting any documents. In addition, any external party is now able to view all the submissions and track submission deadlines in the same system. To recap, U.S. manufacturers may request an exclusion from Section 232 tariffs from the Commerce Department via the portal. If the tariff materials do not pose a threat to national security and there's an insufficient domestic supply, then Commerce may issue an exemption. Other manufacturers have only 30 days to object to such a request before Commerce makes its decision. The original requester may then submit a rebuttal to the objection within the next 7 days, and the objector can file a surrebuttal in the 7 following days. So one final word of warning. Keep in mind the old saying, if you snooze, you lose. If your client is a U.S. manufacturer of steel or aluminum products covered by the tariffs, they're going to need to monitor the portal to learn if a competitor or customer has requested an exclusion in an effort to bring in competing products from abroad. If your client misses the opportunity to object, they may have to wait until the exclusion period ends, which is usually 1 year, until they have another opportunity to object. So remember, if you snooze, you'll lose. Thanks and best regards.